Hello, my name is Roger Bohmrich. Welcome to Millesimos Wine Memos. We're going to talk a little bit about Pinot Noir, which is an historic variety because it's the only grape variety whose name has been in use for over 600 years. It was first recorded in Burgundy in 1375 and is thought to be one of the earliest refinements of wild vines. Pinot Noir, or Pinot in general, is a variety that mutates easily. It's said that there are over 1,000 clones of Pinot Noir in Burgundy alone, and we know other forms of the Pinot grape, such as Pinot Blanc or Pinot Meunier as well. It's a variety that is early budding. It ripens early as well. It is apparently, according to the results we've seen so far, best suited to cool or even marginal growing areas and climates. It's quite susceptible to mildews, and it's very, very prone to botrytis bunch rot. What we find with Pinot Noir quite often is that the pigmentation is relatively low. You can find Pinots with a palish color and yet with a great intensity of aroma and of flavor. So color is not a good indicator in the case of Pinot Noir of the concentration of the wine. Pinot Noir, we also find, is very successful, if we look at the Burgundian example, on lime-rich, alkaline, calcareous soils. Let's look at some of the characteristics that we might find in a glass of Pinot Noir. In hot climates, and mercifully there are very few places where Pinot is grown in conditions that are too hot, but sometimes we find those rare examples of Pinots which have sort of a cherry jam quality. They're jammy, in fact. Maybe it goes on to a darker fruit as well, but classically, when we think of Pinot Noir, we think of red berries. It's not always the case, but red raspberry and strawberry are frequently associated with Pinot Noir, even though in some of the most concentrated and powerful and impressive Burgundian examples of Pinot, you also find a range of black fruits in the wine. Well, Pinot Noir today is almost always given oak treatment of some kind. Rarely is it American oak. If it is American oak, then it would be coopered in a so-called French manner. But usually it's French oak, again following the Burgundian model. And with French oak, we could have either a light or medium toast, or perhaps sometimes, if that's the winemaker's choice, a more heavily toasted barrel, giving off a stronger oak impression, especially if the percentage of new oak is high. And with any sort of French oak treatment, we find a degree of vanilla or vanillin in the wine. And for the same reasons, and particularly when we have a high percentage of new oak, we may find spices that are associated with that oak maturation, cinnamon and clove, quite typically. We're missing only one element, and that's the terroir component. Here we have two stones that in fact come from two celebrated Burgundian vineyards. The smaller stone comes from the great Chambertin vineyard, Le Chambertin, and the other from the Echezeaux family of vineyards. You can see the lime stone that is quite prevalent in the soils of the Côte d'Or in Burgundy. What exactly is the role of that soil? What is the role of soil in general with regard to the characteristics and the quality of wines? Well, we can only draw conclusions from the finished products because empirically speaking, we do not yet know exactly what the role is of the soil in the wine's final quality. Let's now look at some examples of Pinot Noir, and Pinot Noir almost always is a variety that is produced on its own. In other words, it's rarely blended with other grape varieties. Why? Well, I think it's because of the delicacy and that those fine red berries that are frequently overwhelmed if another grape is added to a blend with Pinot Noir. So what we find here are 4 examples of 100% Pinot Noirs. The first 2 are classic Burgundies. The one in my hand at this time is from a very talented young grower, vinifier, Nicolas Potel. It comes from the Côte de Beaune, or the southern half of the Côte d'Or. It's from the Vigne Franche Premier Cru vineyard site. This is in fact a clos, or an enclosure within that vineyard. Wines are known for their early approachability, their gentle, polished red fruits, and yet when they come from very old vines, as in this particular case, the wines are no longer that forward and require, in a vintage like 2003, a fair amount of keeping to really shed their tannic frame and to develop wonderful characteristics. Then we have an example of a Côte de Nuit wine, very famous, Chambertin, from another very skillful, quality-minded grower, and Géante Pensio, and they price fruit at this domaine. They do not keep their wines in wood as long perhaps as many others. So there's a wonderful red berry, red fruit tone. There's sort of a succulent center of richness to this Chambertin. It's a beautiful example of modern Burgundy. Well, where else in the world does Pinot Noir show promise? So many winemakers love the idea of making Pinots at the level of the top Burgundies, but so far it's not an easy proposition to do so, because many of the factors have to come together to allow that to be possible. Well, here in New Zealand, perhaps we're going to find in due course Pinot Noirs of truly outstanding quality. Here's an example of a Pinot from Martinborough, a zone on the south of the South Island of New Zealand, Pallister Estate. What is so attractive about this particular bottling is that it has great delicacy. Here you see those wonderful red strawberry and red raspberry aromas. It's palish in color, but with wonderful intensity of flavor and a long aromatic finish. So you find great purity in this wine and great finesse. Last, let's go to California, and specifically to Santa Barbara County, where we have a wonderful bottling, 2005, from Au Bon Climat. They've made a great name for themselves, particularly based on Pinot Noir, a number of different bottlings. And here you see more fullness, more dark fruit accents, perhaps. There's a warmth, there's a generosity, there's more weight and substance in this wine than certainly the New Zealand example we looked at. It's a very, very good rendition of Pinot Noir. So let's close our session with a little taste.